Imagine spending 14 months planning the most important day of your life. Not 14 weeks. 14 months. The kind of planning that fills notebooks. That turns you into someone who knows the difference between ivory and cream, and has opinions about both. The kind of planning that starts to feel less like a task and more like a love language. A long, deliberate act of building something beautiful for yourself and the person you've chosen. The venue booked. The flowers. Chosen after 3 separate consultations with a florist who made Maya feel, for the first time in her life, like her vision actually made sense. The menu. Tasted not once, not twice, but 3 times, because the chicken needed work and Maya was not the kind of person who served guests something that needed work. Her dress was already altered. The invitations were already printed. The seating chart was a color-coded masterpiece that had taken an entire Saturday afternoon, and had made her fiancé Daniel look at her with the specific expression he reserved for moments when he found her both magnificent and slightly terrifying. Everything was in place. Everything was moving toward something wonderful. And then one Tuesday morning, an ordinary Tuesday, the kind with coffee and a work meeting and nothing to suggest it was about to become a day she would remember for the rest of her life, her phone rang. Not from Daniel. Not from the florist. Not from the venue. From her sister. "I booked your venue. For my wedding." She didn't ask. She didn't warn. She didn't send a text first to soften the blow, or check if anyone was sitting down. She just did it. And when Maya went completely, utterly silent on the phone, her sister filled that silence with 7 more words. "You weren't even using it anymore." Maya was still engaged. The date was still hers. The deposit was still paid. The invitations with that date printed on them were sitting in a box in her spare bedroom. Stay with me, because 3 weeks after that phone call, the venue called her sister right back. And what happened next is the kind of story that makes you believe, even briefly, even imperfectly, that the universe is paying attention. Welcome back. Or if this is your very first time here, welcome. Pull up a chair. Get comfortable. Because what we do on this channel is simple. We take the most unbelievable, raw, and deeply human stories from the internet, and we sit with them together. Not to judge. Not to pile on. But because there is something quietly profound about hearing that someone else has been through something impossible and found a way through it. About recognizing your own family in someone else's story, and feeling a little less alone in whatever you're navigating right now. Before we get into today's story, I want to make you a promise. This story has a full ending. A real, satisfying, almost too good to be true, ending that Reddit rarely delivers on this cleanly. So I'm asking you, please stay. The last 4 minutes of this video contain the moment that broke the internet when this story first went up, and I would hate for you to miss it by clicking away early. I would also love to hear from you today. At the end of this video I'm going to ask you a question. A real one. Not just a like and subscribe, ask, and I genuinely want to read your answers in the comments. Some of you have been through things just like this. Some of you are going through something like this right now. This space is for you too. Alright, let's go back to the beginning. Daniel had proposed on a hiking trail they'd walked a dozen times before. No production value. No flasmav. No drone footage. Just the 2 of them at a bend in the path where the trees cleared and you could see for miles. And Daniel stopped walking and turned around, and said he didn't want to walk through the rest of his life without her beside him. Maya said yes before he'd finished the sentence. And then the planning began. Now Maya was, and I mean this as the highest compliment, a planner in the truest sense. The kind of person who finds genuine joy in the research phase. Who makes spreadsheets not because she has to but because a well-made spreadsheet is its own form of art. Who had opinions about chair rentals and had once spent an entire afternoon creating a mood board for a dinner party that was, by all accounts, just 12 people eating pasta. The wedding planning for Maya was not a chore. It was the project of a lifetime, and she approached it accordingly. She visited 14 venues over the course of 3 months. 14. She had a spreadsheet, naturally, with columns for pricing, availability, guest capacity, parking, catering restrictions, distance from the airport for out-of-town family, and a personal notes column where she wrote things that her rational mind knew weren't technically useful, but her heart insisted on recording anyway. Notes like, smelled like lavender and old wood. And the light at 4 p.m. came through the west windows in a way that made me want to cry. And simply, yes. That last one was next to the listing for a restored Victorian estate 40 minutes outside the city. She and Daniel had toured it on a Thursday afternoon in early autumn. The coordinator walked them through the gardens, sprawling, slightly overgrown in the most romantic way, with roses that were almost done for the season and still managed to be breathtaking. Then through the ballroom, with its original hardwood floors that had been there for 112 years, its high ceilings, its tall windows, and the string lights already woven through the exposed beams above, as though someone had built this room specifically as a backdrop for one of the most important moments of Maya's life. She cried. Right there in the ballroom, in front of the coordinator, in front of Daniel, in front of a room she'd known for approximately 8 minutes. She pressed her hand to her mouth and looked up at the lights and cried. Daniel took her hand. By Saturday, the deposit was paid. The date was set, September 14th. 14 months away. Enough time to plan everything properly. Enough time to do this right. Maya was, by every measure, a woman who had her life in order, who had earned this, who was walking towards something she'd built carefully and joyfully, and with her whole heart. And her sister, Claire, had always had opinions about that. 5:30 to 9:45. Warning Act 2. The history of Claire. Contextualize the rivalry. Make the betrayal feel inevitable, not random. Tension. Rising. Director's note. Slightly faster pace here. This is backstory, but it's crucial. It reframes everything that follows. Deliver it as though you're letting the audience in on a secret you've been waiting to share. To understand what Claire did, you have to understand who Claire had always been in Maya's life. Claire was 2 years older. And for as long as Maya could remember, stretching back to report cards posted on the refrigerator and birthday parties and school concerts, and every milestone that families mark with photographs and applause, their relationship had operated on a quiet but deeply felt scoreboard. Not the kind of competition that announces itself. Not screaming fights or obvious sabotage. The subtler kind. The kind that hides in a half-second pause before a congratulation. Then through the ballroom, with its original hardwood floors that had been there for 112 years, its high ceilings, its tall windows, and the string lights already woven through the exposed beams above, as though someone had built this room specifically as a backdrop for one of the most important moments of Maya's life. She cried. Right there in the ballroom, in front of the coordinator, in front of Daniel, in front of a room she'd known for approximately 8 minutes. She pressed her hand to her mouth and looked up at the lights and cried. Daniel took her hand. By Saturday, the deposit was paid. The date was set, September 14th. 14 months away. Enough time to plan everything properly. Enough time to do this right. Maya was, by every measure, a woman who had her life in order, who had earned this, who was walking towards something she'd built carefully and joyfully, and with her whole heart. And her sister, Claire, had always had opinions about that. This is backstory, but it's crucial. It reframes everything that follows. Deliver it as though you're letting the audience in on a secret you've been waiting to share. To understand what Claire did, you have to understand who Claire had always been in Maya's life. Claire was 2 years older. And for as long as Maya could remember, stretching back to report cards posted on the refrigerator and birthday parties and school concerts, and every milestone that families mark with photographs and applause, their relationship had operated on a quiet but deeply felt scoreboard. Not the kind of competition that announces itself. Not screaming fights or obvious sabotage. The subtler kind. The kind that hides in a half-second pause before a congratulation. In the redirecting of a conversation. In the announcement made just slightly too soon, or the achievement mentioned just slightly too loudly. In just the right company. When Maya graduated with honors, Claire reminded the table at dinner that she'd graduated a year earlier, and had already started her career. When Maya got her first promotion, Claire called their mother the same week with news of a bigger one. When Maya got a dog she adored, Claire got 2. And when Maya got engaged, Claire had called their mother before Maya had even taken a photo of the ring. Maya had told herself, over years and years of telling herself, that this was just how sisters were. That Claire didn't mean it. That the competition existed more in Maya's perception, than in Claire's intentions. That love was complicated and families were complicated, and you didn't get to choose your family, and so you found a way to make peace with the one you had. She'd gotten very good at making peace. She was about to find out that peace has limits. It was a Tuesday. Maya was at her desk at work, mid-morning, somewhere between her second coffee and a meeting she wasn't particularly looking forward to, when her phone buzzed on the desk beside her keyboard, Claire's name on the screen. Maya picked up smiling. She was still in the good months then, the months where thinking about her wedding brought her uncomplicated happiness, where the color-coded spreadsheet was a source of pride rather than anxiety, where September 14th was still just a beautiful destination in the future. Hey, I have news. Me too, actually. I just confirmed the catering and you would not believe what they can do with. I'm getting married. Maya stopped mid-sentence. Claire had been dating someone, a man named Greg, for approximately 4 months. She'd mentioned him a handful of times, always briefly, always with a slight air of mystery that Maya had interpreted as early relationship protectiveness. 4 months was not a long time. 4 months was still the phase where you were discovering each other's coffee orders and deal breakers. But Maya, being Maya, set her own reaction aside immediately and reached for happiness for her sister. Oh my gosh, Claire, congratulations, that's so. And I booked a venue. You're actually going to love this. It's that estate you were looking at. The Victorian one. Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that's very, very full. Maya's brain did the thing brains do when they receive information that cannot possibly be correct. It tried to find an alternative explanation. She must have misheard. Claire must have meant a different estate. There were other Victorians in the area, surely. This was a misunderstanding. This was going to be cleared up in the next sentence. And they were both going to laugh about it, and Maya was going to help her sister plan her wedding with genuine love. And that was going to be that. I'm sorry. Well, you weren't using it anymore. I called and they had the date open. Maya's mouth went dry. Claire, I have a deposit on that venue. September 14th is my wedding date. The invitations are already printed. You knew that. You knew all of that. Well, mine is September 7th. So technically we're not even on the same day. And I just thought, it's such a beautiful venue. Why should only one of us get to use it? I found out they do back-to-back weekends for sisters. I asked. They said yes. She had booked the week before Maya's wedding. Same venue. Same vendors. Without a single conversation beforehand. Without a text. Without a hey, is this okay? Without the most basic courtesy of checking whether the person who had spent 14 months building toward this day might have feelings about sharing her venue, her aesthetic, her carefully chosen backdrop, with her sister's 4-month-old relationship 1 week prior. And then, before Maya could locate a single word from the English language, Claire added one more thing. I was actually hoping you'd be my maid of honor. You have such great taste. Maya hung up. She set her phone face down on her desk. She sat there for 4 minutes. She knows it was 4 minutes because she watched the clock, before she picked the phone back up and called Daniel. And Daniel, bless him, said exactly the right thing. He said, okay, what do you need right now? What Maya needed, it turned out, was to cry. And then to think. And then to figure out what, if anything, she was going to do next. His section is about emotional devastation, not outrage. The quiet pain of family dismissal hits harder when your tone matches it. Slow, careful delivery. What happened next is something many of you will recognize. Not because you've had your wedding venue stolen. Hopefully not. But because you've had the experience of bringing a wound to the people who were supposed to help you heal it, and discovering that they had decided, for reasons of their own, that keeping the peace mattered more than acknowledging your pain. Maya called her parents that evening. She sat with Daniel beside her on the couch, her hands in her lap, and she told them what had happened. All of it. Calmly, clearly, with as much generosity toward Claire's perspective as she could manage while still telling the truth. She expected, not much. She's told interviewers since then that she wasn't expecting her parents to call Claire and demand she cancel. She wasn't expecting anyone to be cut off or punished or forced to apologize. She was expecting, at minimum, to be heard. To have someone say, yes, that was wrong. That was not okay. You are right to feel hurt. Instead, she heard this. She just loves you so much. She wants to share this season with you. Can't that be a beautiful thing? You've always been so sensitive about the competition thing, Maya. Claire doesn't mean it the way you take it. You'll both be married. Isn't that what matters? 2 daughters, both happy, both loved. And right there, in the span of one phone call that lasted less than 20 minutes, Maya experienced something that has a name, even if most families will never say it out loud. The second wound. The first wound is what someone does to you. It's the act of harm. The venue stolen, the boundary crossed, the trust broken. The second wound is when the people who were supposed to be your safe harbor decide that the water is too choppy, and they'd rather stay on shore. It's the moment when you realize that being right isn't enough. That being hurt isn't enough. That some families have a hierarchy of needs, and keeping the surface smooth sits permanently above the work of actually seeing each other clearly. The second wound is often the one that takes longer to heal. Maya sat with it for a week. She went to work. She came home. She opened her wedding binder once and closed it again without making any changes. She and Daniel talked for hours over several evenings about what they wanted to do, what they were willing to accept, what the shape of their relationship with her family was going to look like going forward. And then Maya did something that I think is genuinely remarkable, given everything she was feeling. She chose not to react. Not out of weakness. Not because she'd been convinced by her parents that Claire was right, but because Maya understood, with the hard-won clarity of someone who had spent years navigating her sister's orbit, that reacting was exactly what this situation wanted her to do. That the chaos would benefit the chaos maker. That the best revenge in situations like this one is sometimes just living your life well and letting the other person run out of rope on their own. She made one phone call to the venue, not to report anything or demand anything, just to confirm, quietly, professionally, that her contract was intact. Her deposit was valid. September 14th was hers. The coordinator confirmed everything. Maya said thank you. She hung up. And she waited. She didn't know what she was waiting for. She told Reddit later that she wasn't waiting for revenge. She wasn't even waiting for justice, exactly. She was waiting, she said, for the truth of the situation to make itself known. Because in her experience, the truth always does, eventually, if you can keep your hands clean long enough to let it. I need you to stay right here with me. Because what I'm about to tell you is the part of this story that the entire internet lost its mind over, and I completely understand why. The comments section when Maya posted her update had over 40,000 replies within 48 hours. People were emotional. People were vindicated. Some people cried. I might have cried. Here's what happened. 22 days after Claire's phone call, Maya counted them, because that is what Maya does. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. Local area code. She almost let it go to voicemail. She was in the middle of something at work, and unknown numbers rarely bring good news, and she had, frankly, had enough news lately. She picked up. It was the venue coordinator. Not the one Maya usually dealt with. A different one. A woman she hadn't spoken to before. Her voice was professional, warm, slightly careful in the way that voices get when they're delivering information that might be sensitive. Hi, I'm calling about a booking made recently for September 7th. Under the name Claire, last name. I understand you may know this party? Maya said yes. She knew the booking. We've been attempting to reach the party who made the reservation for the past week. The second installment of the deposit was due 3 days ago, and we haven't been able to make contact through any of the numbers or email addresses on file. Per the terms of our booking contract, which all clients sign at reservation, if a scheduled payment is not received within 30 days of the due date, and the client has not made arrangements with our billing department, the reservation is considered forfeited, and the date becomes available again. We wanted to reach out to you because you're listed as an emergency contact on this account, and given that you have an existing reservation with us for the following weekend, we wanted to make sure you were aware in case any of this affected your planning. Maya thanked the coordinator. She hung up the phone. She put her phone face up on her desk this time, and she sat there for what she later described as approximately 90 seconds of completely silent, completely internal chaos, before she closed her office door, sat back down, and quietly laughed until her eyes watered. Not triumphantly. Not cruelly. Just released. Because here is what had happened, pieced together over the following days through a combination of overheard conversations, careful questions, and information that eventually made its way through the family grapevine whether anyone intended it to or not. Claire and Greg had gotten engaged on emotion. On the specific and intoxicating energy of a new relationship combined with the competitive electricity of watching your younger sister build something beautiful. They'd booked the venue on that same energy, with Claire's credit card, in an afternoon, without fully reading the payment schedule that came with the contract. The Victorian estate was expensive. It was gorgeous and historic and staffed by people who cared deeply about what they did. And none of that was free. The deposit structure was tiered. An initial booking payment, then installments at 90, 60, and 30 days from the event, with strict terms about each one. Claire had paid the initial booking. And then the relationship, 4 months old, tested suddenly by the reality of wedding planning, the stress of financial commitments, the discovery of what another person looks like when logistics and money and family pressure all descend at once, had begun to fracture. The second installment came due. Claire didn't pay it. Whether because she and Greg had started to disagree about the cost, or the timeline, or something larger than both. Maya never found out the whole story, and she made peace with not knowing. What she knew was, the venue sent a formal cancellation notice to Claire's email address. The September 7th booking was forfeited. The date was released. And Maya's September 14th wedding, her color-coded lavender-scented string light, original hardwood floor, cried in the ballroom wedding, remained exactly where it had always been. Intact. Undisturbed. Hers. She and Daniel were married on September 14th. The light through the west windows in the late afternoon, Maya said later, was exactly what her notes had promised it would be. She cried again. This time completely on purpose. Maya posted an update on Reddit about 6 weeks after her wedding. Not on her wedding day. She was too busy actually being present in her wedding day to document it for the internet, which I find genuinely delightful. 6 weeks later, rested, still technically in the golden haze of early marriage, she sat down and wrote the update that 40,000 people responded to. She didn't gloat. That's the thing about this story that matters most to me. And I think it's the thing that made it resonate so widely. She had every right to gloat. The internet would have cheered her on. Instead, she wrote something that I think is worth reading slowly. I used to think the worst part of what Claire did was stealing the venue. But looking back, it wasn't. The worst part was realizing that some people genuinely cannot watch you have something good without needing to reach out and take some of it for themselves. Even if taking it means hollowing it out for both of you. Claire didn't want my venue. She wanted to not be behind me. Those are very different things, and one of them is much sadder. Maya Reddit update post. She also wrote about her parents. Carefully, without bitterness, but honestly. She said that the experience had shown her something about the family she'd grown up in. The way conflict was managed by smoothing rather than addressing. The way the person who raised the problem was often treated as the problem itself. She said it hadn't broken her relationships with them, but it had changed what she expected from them, and managing expectations, she'd found, was a form of self-protection that looked a lot like peace if you didn't look too closely. She wrote about Daniel. About the way he'd handled every part of this. Not by raging or intervening or trying to fix what couldn't be fixed, but by asking, every single day through those difficult weeks, what she needed. She said marrying him on September 14th in a ballroom full of the people who had actually shown up for them felt like the most accurate possible statement of what their life together was going to be. And at the very end of her update, she wrote the thing that I think explains why this story traveled so far. The venue calling her was never really the point. I didn't need justice from a building. The point was that I didn't set anything on fire on the way out. I kept my deposit, I kept my date, I kept my dignity, and I married the best person I've ever known in the most beautiful room I've ever stood in. Claire didn't take September 14th from me. She just reminded me how much I wanted it. Maya, Reddit update post. Here is what I think about when I think about this story. And I've thought about it a lot since I first read it. We live in a cultural moment that is very good at the performance of justice. At the screenshot, the call-out, the viral post, the public reckoning. And sometimes those things are necessary. Sometimes exposure is the only tool that works. But there is another kind of response to being wrong that is much quieter, and I would argue much harder. It is the response that says, I am not going to let what you did make me someone I don't recognize. I am going to keep my hands clean. I am going to keep building the thing I was building before you interrupted me. And I am going to trust, not naively, not passively, but with the clear-eyed patience of someone who understands how these things tend to go, that the truth will surface on its own. Maya didn't win because the venue called Claire back. She won the moment she decided, in the week after that phone call, that she was not going to become the chaos that was being thrown at her. The phone call from the venue was just the universe's way of confirming what was already true. That is, I think, a harder thing to do than most of us will ever fully acknowledge. And it is worth naming. If you made it this far, thank you. I mean that genuinely. You didn't just watch a video. You sat with someone's real life, their real pain and their real grace under pressure. And that is worth something. Here's my question for you today. If you were Maya, would you still have Claire in your life? Drop your answer in the comments below. Yes, no, or it's complicated. And if it's complicated, tell me why. I read everything. The comments on this channel are consistently the most thoughtful corner of the internet. And I am not exaggerating when I say that. If this story hit you somewhere real, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Share this with one person who needs to hear that holding your ground quietly is still holding your ground. I'll see you in the next one.